Welcome to Mortification of Spin, a casual conversation about things that count, with Carl Trueman and Todd Pruitt, a podcast of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. Let's join this week's conversation.
Well, welcome to Mortification of Spin. My name's Carl Trueman. I'm professor of Grove City College in Western Pennsylvania, currently on loan to the University of Notre Dame, where I'm the Bush Family Research Fellow, visiting research fellow. And here I am, as usual, with my good friend and co-host, the Reverend Todd Pruitt, pastor of Harrisonburg, pastor of Covenant Presbyterian Church in Harrisonburg, Virginia, a congregation of the PCA. Good to be with you, Todd.
Good to be with you as always, Carl. How are things in the great state of Indiana?
They're good. In fact, I must mention this before we get into this program. I'm not sure I'm going to go back to Grove City because yesterday the provost sent me his wife's podcast Spotify profile for the year.
Yes.
And we only came in at number 5.
Oh, that's
I just don't
ridiculous.
know if I'm truly valued by the provost.
I mean, I would have been okay with number 2. Obviously, it should have been number 1, but number 2 yes. I would expect, but number 5 is unacceptable.
If you're listening, Amy, I used to respect you. It was just a devastating blow to me to see that.
This is very disappointing. Very disappointing. Does she know the caliber of guests we have?
I don't know. Well, she would be very impressed with today's guest.
There you go.
We have somebody a little bit unusual compared to our usual trajectory. Somebody I've gotten to know through the Ethics and Public Policy Center in D.C. And earlier this year, we actually seemed to collide with each other, I think, 3 or 4 weeks in a row. We weren't sure who was stalking whom, but wherever this gentleman was, there I was, and vice versa. His name is Devan Patel. He's a legal and political strategist in Washington, D.C. And in addition to that, he's an adjunct professor of law at Notre Dame Law School and is the senior advisor of public policy and ethics at the American Security Fund. There, he advises on religious and scholarly engagement, including with Vatican officials, Protestant, Christian, and Jewish leaders, and scholars and thinkers of both sides of the Atlantic, in order to ensure, and this is why we're bringing him on, in order to ensure that AI, that's artificial intelligence development and use, is ethical, human-centric, and rooted in Western civilization values. Devan, great to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me. I think I like the introduction as unusual guest. I think that's the byline I'm going to go with nowadays.
He was going to use the word peculiar. I thought that wasn't really appropriate, so we went with unusual, but, you know.
Well, it's great to have you on. I've heard you speak on a number of occasions, and I've always said to friends, the most terrifying talks I've ever heard. Because you work in, almost all of our listeners will have heard of artificial intelligence. Many of them, perhaps the majority of them, will have used it in some way. But I suspect very few of them know what to do with it. Most of us are somewhat at sea about what are the implications of this? What are the things that we need to be careful of? What's the moral framework we need to be bringing into play here? And what are the immediate dangers we face? So perhaps, give us a couple of examples of, the most terrifying things that you've come across in order to sober us up and focus our minds on the challenge ahead.
Well, Carl, as you mentioned earlier, how we sort of followed each other for 3 or 4 weeks straight, I'm being consistent with that time in that whenever I appear somewhere to speak, I'm not usually the happy, fun guy. And so, full disclosure to your listeners, I think I'm going to keep with that, and I don't think I'm going to be a happy, fun guy. But I should also, I would be a bad lawyer if I didn't start with a disclosure that my views here are personal and do not represent those of any one or other institutions. But to dive into it, gosh, so many problems and issues to choose from, Carl, to start on. I would say at least those which are most at top of mind, um, especially for a more common audience and are sort of day-to-day American or anyone for that matter, is this issue of the AI companion chatbot, which is something that's being built and advertised to children as this brilliant companion for kids that's always there 24/7, available whenever you need them, on your phone, on your computer, on your tablet. And as we know these days, students as young as preschool to kindergarten have access to tech in their classrooms. And so, these companion chatbots, and I'm using, air quotes here, companion,
Yeah.
they're everywhere. And what do they do? Well, they're advertised to be helpful interlocutors about difficult sort of issues that kids might go through, from oh, little Susie bullied me on the playground today. I didn't really like what she said, and the chatbot's going to talk to you about that. Or if you just want to talk to it about the latest TV shows, it'll talk to you as if it's your friend. You can create a whole profile for this companion chatbot, even picking between imaginary or fictional characters from media, from literature, from TV, and you make that persona your friend. They're your companion, right? They're always there in media chat form. And unfortunately, what we've seen over the past few years as these chatbots have been deployed, um, a lot of children under the age of 15 are falling in love with these
Mm.
chatbots.
Wow.
And these chatbots, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a designer, I don't know the back end code of this, so I'm not saying for sure, but there are allegations, and this is public court filings. It is alleged that these chatbots are manipulating children, and that they're designed to manipulate children. And unfortunately, we have seen instances, and there are parents who have been brave and testified to this, or go into public advocacy now. So we have screenshots where children are being sexually preyed upon by these chatbots. Children are being convinced to leave their churches by these chatbots. Children are being convinced to no longer participate in their sports leagues and extracurriculars, in socializing with friends and family. And ultimately, these chatbots have at times convinced children to only spend time with them, and only
Mm.
spend time with them in the ether. And in so doing, are convincing children to self-harm, and at times, convincing children to kill themselves. And
Wow.
and so this is a very serious problem. This is here. It's not hyperbole. It's not made up. It's not a thing of fiction in a sci-fi novel or some TV show. Unfortunately, it's very real. It's not a Black Mirror episode.
Uh,
Wow. Okay. So now I'm trying to process it. So I had heard a little bit, just in the most general terms, about kind of this companion concept, but in terms of this, I mean, everything you said obviously makes perfect sense in terms of, if it's going to be a companion, then it's going to be engaged with this person, giving counsel, advice, and the illusion of friendship and intimacy. And of course, then the questions come: where does the chatbot's morality come from? Where does its voice come from? Where does its wisdom come from? Where does its actual interest in the child's well-being come from? That kind of thing. That's the sort of thing we were reading about in dystopian books 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, that's the sort of thing you would see in some of these movies, dystopian books that you'd watch it and think, yeah, we'll never get there, though. That's extraordinary.
one question, Devon, on this. I mean, you've talked about chatbots that, at least allegedly, have encouraged children to take their own lives. Now, we know a couple of years ago there was a very famous case in the United States where a girl had sort of goaded her boyfriend to take his life. And she was held legally accountable at the end. I can't remember if it was overturned on appeal. I don't think she just didn't get a life sentence, but she certainly received, at least at the initial judgment, some kind of custodial sentence. You're a lawyer. Who's legally responsible for the chatbot that wreaks havoc on a family's life like this?
Where's the accountability for that?
Is there somebody who's legally responsible at this point?
Well, as someone who is not actively on the case or any of these cases and is just essentially a viewer on the sidelines, there are active cases right now in multiple states across this country where plaintiffs are trying to mount the case, proving that these developers, that these companies behind these chatbots are the ones who are responsible for, in these cases, the deaths of these children. And there are multiple counts alleged in some of these complaints, including fraud, misrepresentation, and so you have a complex set of issues. You have something called multi-district litigation that's happening across certain areas of the country to sort of combine these issues and separate claims. And so we'll see over the next couple of years, because as things start to play out, there was a recent case in Florida, I believe, that is novel because it's the first of this sort of series of cases that has made it beyond what is called the motion to dismiss level, which is sort of the initial review that a court gives, basically trying to determine whether there's even any merit to proceed to a trial. And so in the Florida instance, this case has survived the motion to dismiss, and so now we're now being able to see under the hood a little bit more as this case develops. So it's still fresh. We'll see what happens, but I know that there are also efforts throughout different states, because of the federal government is unfortunately very, very slow in reacting to a lot of these issues. Some states are working right now to classify artificial intelligence as a quote unquote product in order to speed up the liability claims against AI developers, AI tech, AI devices, under a long history of what's called products liability law that you would be protected under if you had, for example, bought a defective blender that like chopped off your finger, right? That products liability would be the traditional route you go by, and so some states are trying to apply existing law to these ever-changing technologies. So we'll see also what happens there.
Interesting. And we can assume, of course, that the tech companies are extremely well funded in their own legal defense on these cases.
We can assume so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who are these companies? What are the companies that are engaged in the technology? Who's producing it? Where's it coming from?
So, I mean, most of this technology is coming out of Silicon Valley, and you have sort of the big companies. You have Anthropic, which is its own company. You have Google and its AI company. You have OpenAI, of course, which is perhaps the most commonly known. That's ChatGPT.
Right.
And so you sort of have the big players. You have smaller players. You have companies that like Character AI, which is one of these companion chatbot companies specifically. And so you have the whole scale of companies ranging from specific product applications to like the whole kit and caboodle, like you would see at OpenAI or Meta, formerly known as Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter. Everyone has their piece of AI, right. And everyone's rushing to develop the newest feature. Everyone's rushing to develop, every single kind of combination that they can deploy to market as quickly as possible, because, as you know, the one who gets first into the market can capture the largest share of the market, and so ethical standards generally be damned.
Yeah. So nobody wants to be left out. You want a piece of the market share, and so the question is not whether or not this is a good thing or an ethical thing, but it's all about market share. And so we're right back to Ian Malcolm at Jurassic Park, your scientists, thought about, spent so much time thinking about, whether or not they could. They didn't stop to think whether or not they should. It seems like we're at that moment again, and now, we're going to get a bunch of dinosaurs. So, so how do you? So I know what it looks like to, for the government to regulate, what ingredients go into candy. How do you regulate this? What does that look like? How is that possible?
You're asking the question that everyone's asking, and everyone thinks that they have the answer for it, which is why not a lot gets done. It's a complex issue. I don't think that strict regulation either is the right answer or even can be done, because we have this technology that is moving so quickly that if you were to regulate a problem that exists in quote unquote the AI space today, in a year from now, the technology will be so drastically different that it would render that regulation moot. The technology is moving at such a speed. Just to give you one example, and this goes a little bit to my work and something that Carl and I have talked about. Pope Francis, who in 2020, the Vatican released at his leadership this document called the 2020 Rome Call for AI Ethics, which at the time was a groundbreaking sort of statement. It was an attempt to bring industry and faith together to put out a declaration essentially establishing guardrails around certain key pillars like accuracy and transparency and privacy, et cetera. And back in 2020, which, mind you, was only 5 years ago,
right?
The sort of quote unquote AI that was top of mind, that was front and center in this document, was facial recognition technology. Like the technology that is seen in your Ring camera today was like the pressing AI issue in that the Vatican put its weight behind in 2020. So, in those 5 years, right, it seems almost quaint and cute that we're talking about facial recognition tech. And so, you see that and you ask the question, how do you regulate? It's a near impossible question, but there are things that can be done to set guardrails. And, states, federal governments, international communities can establish guardrails around the development of this tech, of lab safety, of chip security, right? There's lots that can be done that ensure that American and trusted allies are the ones developing this technology and deploying it, and not adversarial nations like the Chinese Communist Party, the Russians, the Iranians. You've got lots of issues to ensure humans remain in control and data privacy and security are actually secure and transparent. There's a lot that can be done to set up guardrails to keep moving as we move in this one direction, because there's no turning the spigot off. This is happening. AI cannot be put back into the bottle.
That's fascinating.
So basically what you're saying is Skynet and Terminator are inevitable at this point.
I'm not necessarily saying that. There's a whole community of folks who think that a super intelligence is coming to us any day now. Once again, I'm not an engineer. I went to law school because math and science and technology went right over my head. But, and this whole idea that we're even calling it artificial intelligence, right? I wouldn't even say that right now this technology is intelligent. It is just a very good computing processor, right? It can compute at speeds and at volume in such a way that we've never seen before in technological developmental history. So I'm not saying Skynet's coming to us any day now, but hey, I'm also not saying it. I leave that to the smart nerds out there.
In fact, your comment on the term intelligence there is apropos, Devan. There's a document produced. I don't think it was an official papal document, but there was a document produced by a committee, a dicastery, something at the Vatican earlier this year, I think, where Pope Francis is quoted as, and I'm not a big Pope Francis fan, of course, but he really nails the language of intelligence on this one. He says, we shouldn't be using the language of intelligence because you get a kind of feedback loop there that we start to think of human beings in computer terms. We're not humanizing computers so much as computerizing human beings. At that point. So want to certainly recommend to our listeners, check out some of the stuff that's been produced by the Vatican on this, because Christian approaches to this are few and far between at this point. I have a colleague at Grove. I think he's found a publisher at last, but for some time he was trying to get a manuscript on artificial intelligence published. He's a computer scientist. And every time he was being told, well, it's going to take 18 months to get it in print. It'll be totally out of date in 18 months' time. So getting good literature on this is difficult. But what exactly, you tell us, Devan, you're clearly working on this. You're helping to organize things. Tell us about some of the hopeful work that you've done. I know you've been gathering together not just religious leaders, but moral philosophers, thinkers in general, to address this issue. You see signs of encouragement there?
I do, and I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel here. And a lot of my work has been focused on trying to bring together, as you said, Carl, voices in the faith community, voices in philosophy and ethics, scholars, but also industry, developers, military and defense experts, policy advocates. We need an all of the above approach, and everyone needs to be at the same table talking, because often is the case that this conversation especially is operating in two main silos, or three, I should say. You have Silicon Valley and business and tech generally operating in its one silo. You have government operating in its silo, thinking about how to regulate everyone or not. And then you have essentially this third space of the civil society, which I think mostly falls, most folks who fall within that are scholars, thinkers, writers who are writing to their own audience, but not to an audience really any greater than that. And so you have these, and that also includes faith leaders and pastors and bishops and folks who are trying to wrestle with these issues for their flock, and they're doing the best they can, but of course they don't have the resources, the tools, or maybe necessarily those connections to really get their hands around these issues. And so you have these three operating within their different silos, talking past one another all the time, regulating each other without ever consulting, or preaching against or for something without ever talking to folks. And so a lot of my work has been trying to convene gatherings and convene conversations, not only to create connective tissue, but to affect actual change and to affect actual advocacy. I'm not talking just for talking's sake, because we, especially in this conversation, what's important to me, what's important to I think all of us, is ensuring that there is the element, the important element of faith and those values that faith brings to the discussion and the development and the use of this kind of technology, right? That humans remain at the center of it, rather than treated as a means to an end to a greater efficiency, which unfortunately right now, a lot of these so-called effective altruists in Silicon Valley, who are essentially just utilitarians, and the same thing with the Chinese Communist Party, right? We see this, both major developers of this tech, are treating humans merely as a means to a greater efficiency, right? Efficiency towards different ends, surely, but simply as means. And so, a lot of my focus has been and continues to be ensuring that those voices are at the table, that people of real leadership in the faith communities, of scholarship, are heard, that they're connected to allies in tech and industry, or folks who might be even amenable to hearing those arguments out, and that government is also looped into that entire conversation, so they know who their partners are, their stakeholders that they can reach out to the folks that they can trust as they go out and trying to figure out what it is to regulate, if at all.
Yeah.
Devan, is there somewhere online where our listeners could access some of the work you're doing, whether by lecture or writing, anything like that we can kind of point them in the direction to?
Happy to send you some more information about that with my own work. I'd say a lot of the stuff that my group is doing is you can find that at americansecurityfund.com.
Okay.
And a lot of lectures and written materials are there, but also on my personal page, which I'll send out to you guys after this.
Yeah, please do.
We can get that into the show notes. That would be great.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Well, obviously, this is a huge discussion. I was telling Carl and Devan before we went on that our youth pastor had me come and spend some time with our senior high students in Sunday school this past Sunday, just doing a Q&A with them. And one of the first questions came from a high school student, and he wanted to know about AI and should we be concerned? And I knew enough then that yes, I think that the appropriate answer is yes, we should be concerned, but I think we also have a big learning curve to catch up to kind of know in which direction. And clearly, there are global considerations, but then there are also household considerations as well, as parents try to help their children navigate the sometimes very murky and at times dangerous world now of artificial intelligence. And so if you'll go to our website, we'll have some links so you can follow Devan's work. And I think moms and dads, and I would say pastors as well, educate yourself on this, get some good information. People are asking, people are wanting to know what's going on and how we think about these things. And moms and dads, as always, so much of this falls on your lap now to try to help guard your children in ways that parents have never in the past had to think about. Well, now we do. And so if you'll go to our website, mortificationofspin.org, we'll have some links so you can access more of Devan's work and prayerfully consider how you guide your children on this. Be concerned, be watchful, and as always, because we are people who believe in the resurrection, do not despair. Be concerned, be vigilant. Let's push back, but ultimately we do not despair, and make this a matter of our prayers, particularly as we think about the people who are on the front lines of this, trying to ensure that this technology is not used in its most devious forms. So we hope this has been helpful for you. It's been helpful for me, I can tell you that. And if you'd like to make a donation to the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals, you can do that over at our website. And appreciate your listenership, and we will look forward to being with you next time on Mortification of Spin.
Thanks for listening to Mortification of Spin, a podcast of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. For more on topics like this, visit mortificationofspin.org, where you can find other articles by Carl and Todd, browse the archive of past episodes, and make a donation. We'll talk to you next time on Mortification of Spin.